I went to the dean, and she said, "Well, we can find a program for you." And so I looked around and looked around. And I said, "Well, if I'm going to stay here, I may as well find something that's interesting." And so I went into the film program for a year, and I loved it over there. And I learned more about documentary filmmaking and, you know, how to do videography, cinematography, directing, producing, and I just loved it. And it just kind of grew from there. Like, I've always had an interest in theater as well. And so to just, wherever I can grow in any direction, and it seemed like the next logical step is move into film.
Right, because I was going to say your degree, you attended an HBCU, right?
I did, yes, 2 actually.
Tell us about that, because you were, I mean, the conversation is meandering, as it is wont to do. So you're born in, is it South Carolina?
I was born in Virginia.
In Virginia.
Yeah, I was born in Virginia. Yeah, then I went to school down in Florida.
Right. So you were the one that chose that college. What prompted you?
Well, it's funny. A good friend of mine is Bokar Toure. So his father is Kwame Toure, also known as Stokely Carmichael.
Right, whose son is actually the mayor of Newark right now.
Yeah, and he went to the University of Virginia in my hometown, and so when I was a senior in college, I spoke to him. He was a mentor of mine, and he said, you know, the people, you should go down south, man. You know, you have a lot of things to say. You can go down there. You can start a movement, and it sounded, you know, at the time it sounded real nice to me. I said, yeah, and I was really heavy in the activism and freedom fighting, and it just seemed like the logical step. And it's funny because I got to Daytona Beach, and it turned out to be probably the most racist place I've ever been in my life.
Absolutely.
And I found out quickly that my help, you know, was needed down there. We led a lot of fights, you know.
So, Darnell, I mean, are you coming from an activist family? What made you? Because I've looked at some of your works, and I've looked at some of the authors that you quote as inspiring you and being role model for you, and it's definitely very rooted and grounded in activism. And for one so young, I mean, where does that root come from?
Yeah, and it's funny. Like, no, I don't necessarily come from a family of activists, but they were definitely there for support, especially my mom. She supported me wherever I went. I think when I was, I'd say about 13, I started reading more, and I got into the Black Panther Party. I started reading about the Black Panther Party, and it just grew and grew and grew from there. And I started working with folks out of Philadelphia who were fighting for Mumia Abu-Jamal, and folks who were taking trips to Cuba back in the 90s to visit Assata Shakur. And I was too young to go, but I was working with these people, and it just grew from there. Like in my high school, I even started. I started the African American History program because I led a march out at my high school.
Wow!
And every year I was getting protests. I was having protests and getting petitions signed. And the principal finally called me and was like, you know, we're going to go ahead and do this. Thank you for your hard work. I was going to every meeting at the school board, and my mom was always there, so she was a big support. But she wasn't necessarily an activist herself.
That's amazing. I mean, you had that spirit, but not only did you have the spirit, but it was effective because you were able to effect change.
Yeah, and it feels good. Like, and for the most part, it was a very small, a small amount of us. It was me and maybe 5 others who were very persistent. Like, I was always there to make sure things got done. And then I would go to my friends like, listen, I know you're scared to walk out, but we got to do this, you know. And so now I know how important it is for even one person to try to affect change. You know, it can be done, and I've seen it happen. So I just keep going, you know, and motivate others. Like right now, there are 2 students in my high school now, and they're 13, 14 years old, and they're trying to start a Black student union. And I went to school with their aunt, so their aunt calls me, and she's like, "Oh, they need your help," and so I was able to help them get this started.
Incredible.
And this is 15 years later.
Wow, Darnell, do you think that this is a way to engage our youth? I mean, because you know, everybody has this conversation about the disconnect between the youth today and the next generation. How do we reach across and pull them forward?
I mean, it's as easy as just going back and going to these places where we came from lending a hand and showing them how to be leaders and not trying to take the reins from them, but showing them that, hey, I'm here to support you. So when, like when I found out they were doing this project for the Black Student Union, I didn't say, hey, this is what you need to do. I asked, what are your plans? Okay, let me know if you need any help. And they were like, yeah, well, we need to get this sign and this sign. And so I was there to support them through that and help them get it signed. But I made sure that I was there as more of a support than someone that was there to take over. And I think a lot of times we have older folks, like my generation, who look at the younger kids and say, you're not doing this right. This is not how I did it. We have to realize that it's not a one-size-fits-all. Like, things have changed. Right. And what worked for me may not work for them.
Absolutely.
So I need to hear what works for them and support that.
So you think that there's an element, there's a sense of you couldn't possibly know what you're talking about. I've done it before, so my way must be the right way, and we really need to listen to these experiences from the youth today.
Yeah, I think we really need to get in there and listen. And see what they have to say. They really have some great ideas, and they know what it's like now on the the front lines, so to speak.
And it's very timely that we're having this conversation because, of course, one of the big topics right now that's trending all over the place is that video that surfaced in I forget where it was now.
In South Carolina.
In South Carolina, yeah. With the excessive use of force. Why the police were called in the first place is beyond me, because it just seems when we're talking about kids of color, Black and Hispanic children, it's brute force must be applied to them at all times.
It's so sad, and I really, it leaves me speechless because I know, like, it happens so often. It happened to me even in college.
Wow.
Where I was held at gunpoint by police, and they held a gun to my friend's head, and we were both stretched out on the ground, and and it's a very difficult thing to deal with, and you just keep seeing it happen over and over. And like we had a discussion a few weeks ago, someone was saying, history just keeps repeating itself, and I said, no, it's not repeating itself because it's always been our present. Like, for people of color, this has always been
the reality.
There. And it's never been a thing of the past. It's just happening every day, and it's just crazy. Like, and even the students now with that situation, the students of color are protesting to get the officer back in the school.
But are these white students who are protesting, or
no? These are students, white students as well. But the ones that they're interviewing are students of color. Like, they interviewed one of the black male students there, and he's like, we really want to bring him back. If the student would have just listened to what he had to say, he wouldn't have had to do that. And it's like, are you kidding me? What's happening? What's going on?
Okay. I mean that, I'm listening to this and I'm just shaking my head at the ignorance and the brainwashing that's taking place.
It's the colonized mind. They say.
Yeah, what I see is that the victim is being blamed and being victimized yet again. Nobody can understand that this man is this police officer. Well, I guess he's been fired from the force, so he's no longer a police officer unless he can go to another state and get another job, much like the pedophile priest. Yes, I said it.
Exactly.
But he was bench pressing 600 pounds, so he was no lightweight. And for him to throw this girl down with the chair, she could have broken her neck.
Yeah, he slammed her on her back and then dragged her across the room.
And threw her.
Because
I don't
she
care
wouldn't
what
put her
she
cell
did.
phone away or whatever reason. And people are saying, well, what did she do? It doesn't matter what she did.
Somebody,
it's like,
somebody, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Darnell. I'm
sorry,
getting passionate now. Someone posted on Facebook that, the other kids had put their heads down and they were behaving. And I wrote, and I said, yeah, the reason they had their heads down, they were terrified that he would do the same thing to them.
Yep.
Because the
it's
woman
Stockholm syndrome, it's so many. I get so many issues with that. Like, it's so many things we're dealing with, especially as people of color. It's like we're taking the oppressor side, and it's the whole Stockholm syndrome,
yes,
colonization, whitewashing, whatever we want to call it.
You know
It's
what it
there
is?
and it's so
How to
visible.
make a slave. That
Exactly.
letter.
It's insane.
But I mean, you're moving to your documentary now.
Hmm.
I see where the progression is. That you've been an activist since high school. You took that into college. I wanted to ask you. You mentioned that you had a gun held to your head as
Yes.
a college student. How did that impact your life going forward?
Um. Well, it's funny. I, I mean, it didn't change my view of. That didn't change my view of police officers. I think when I was even younger, I was playing with my cousins in the park. And we were playing like hide and seek or tag, and we were running. And a cop ran up to me. Two cops ran up to me and held me for an hour, asking me all kinds of questions. I may have been 10 or 11 years old.
Wow.
Saying, "Where are you running to? Why are you running? What's going on?" I'm like, "I'm playing a game with my cousins." "No, you ran because you seen us coming." I'm like, "No, I didn't." And so that was my first run-in with the police. And from there, it was like, okay, I see that I can't fully trust them. And so when I was held at gunpoint in Daytona, it wasn't the first incident I had in Daytona Beach. So it was like, okay, this is happening again. And it just made me more angry and more, ready to get every story that I could out there and to expose every incident that was happening. Because even like 2 weeks after I was held at gunpoint by the police, a friend of mine broke up a fight on the beach between two white boys. And my friend's black. He broke up two white boys fighting. The police let the white boys go, arrested my friend for disturbing the peace and resisting arrest. And like he did absolutely nothing but break the fight up. And so it just kept happening. And so it just made me want to yell out more and get all these stories told and expose these racists and these systems of oppression even more. And so like everything that I've created since then, well, not everything, but most of my creative work is I try to speak to the times as much as possible and try to get it out there.
Wow. I mean, do you still live in South Carolina? No, you
No,
live
I've never. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Where do you live now?
Oh no. So now I live in Los Angeles.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
but it's just kind of transferring one place for another. The psyche is still the same, right?
Oh, it's still the same. Like even now, like I drive a 1987 Chevrolet Caprice, and I get pulled over I'd say every week probably. Like anytime I drive my car, if a cop pulls up behind me, I get pulled over. I have yet to get a ticket, like because I know that I'm not doing anything illegal, and they'll try to put something on me, and I'm like, no, that's not true, and so they can't give me a ticket, but they pull me over, and then I have friends here who say, well, just get rid of your car, and I'm like, no,
Why
that's
should you
not
do that?
that's not the problem.
Yeah.
The problem isn't my car. The problem is that I'm black.
Mm-hmm. Do you document the number of times that you're pulled over? Perhaps you should start a class action, driving while black.
That's a great idea, and I've thought about it, and that's actually a really great idea.
But I think
I'm not even the only one. Like I have friends as well who get pulled over, and they have nice cars, and it's like they get pulled over. Like what are you doing over in this side of town? Like I had a cop tell me, I was going to write you a ticket, but you're so articulate, so I'm going to let you go.
Are you kidding me? So
yeah,
maybe you need to have a dash cam in the car when these exchanges are taking
now
place.
When I get pulled over, I pull my camera out and put it right on the cop, and I'm like, I'm recording this whole
You got to be careful, Darnell. Really be careful because we see what happens to people who fight back.
Oh, I know.
Can somebody say
and it's a scary thing. Like I feel like it's a lose-lose situation, and I really don't know how to handle it all the way. And when I get into these situations, like I can't handle racism well. Like I've never been able to handle it well. So when it happens to me, I just part of me just I black out, and I don't know what takes over. Things just happen, and so I'm working on that. But I'm trying to be careful.
I think what happens is that you have to basically be around positive people. You have to have a support system. People have to know where you are at all times. And I'm not trying to frighten you, but we have to be realistic because we've seen so many of our young voices cut down, going back to the days of the Panthers. Anybody who
Mhm.
wants to tell it like it is and speak truth to power, they
Right.
are eliminated, you know. Um,
Oh, very true.
so, you know, that's just a word from a wiser head to you.
I appreciate that.
You are going to find yourself in this situation because of the path that you've chosen to take. But don't be stupid about it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Understand the resources that are going to be pitted against you.
Yep. I'm working on that. My mom, she calls me all the time. She's like, "Listen, you can't say this, or you can't do this, or you
Mm.
can't put this in public, or you can't say this in public." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right, you're right." Like I was in Starbucks maybe a year ago. Me and some friends were in there talking about the Black Lives Matter movement and all the young black people who are being killed by police officers.
Mm-hmm.
And a cop happened to be standing there, and he comes over to the table and he heard part of the conversation. And he's like, "Well, what do you think needs to happen to make a change?" And I told him, I said, "Well, I think we have to start killing police officers for y'all to
No,
pay
you
attention."
didn't.
Yeah, and he said nothing. He just looked at us and walked out of Starbucks like he didn't say anything. And my friends were sitting there like, "Are you crazy?" They're like, "He's waiting outside right now." And I was like, "Oh God."
But
Oh God.
what would make you say that? Did you Is that what you
Well,
really
because
think?
I mean, I would not kill a police officer myself, and I don't think anyone should try it. But I feel like we've exhausted so many possibilities of trying to bring about change, or even trying to have a conversation. Like no one's taking anything serious
I
now, and
think
it's like,
yeah.
what can happen? And so my friends asked, they said, what do you think needs to happen? And I said, well, we've tried everything. I said, maybe that's the answer. I said, we don't know. And they're like, oh, that can't be it. And I'm like, well, we don't know because we haven't tried it. And so I just put it out there as a possibility, and that was his response. He just walked out.
But yeah, I really don't agree on that one because
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a far step, and it's crazy. It's a crazy idea,
right.
and I'm hoping that we can find another way to go
There
about
has
it.
to be another way because you can't. An eye for an eye is going to make
Hmm.
everybody blind.
Exactly.
Really.
Exactly.
So that's definitely something that we need to have more discussions on. I think maybe educating our youth as to
Hmm.
how to interact with police, but at the same time, we can see that articulate people, intelligent people, are victimized in the same way that thugs are. And
Exactly.
so, you know, how do we get to that point? But I want to move now, Darnell, to your documentary. Um,
Okay.
Tell us tell us the name of the documentary first of all,
So the name of the documentary is Seeking Asylum.
and the premise behind it. Tell us without giving everything away. The
Okay.
story behind it.
Well, I was going to Norway. I was in Los Angeles. I found a cheap ticket to Norway,
Oh, I'm turned on.
and my friend Terrence hit me up on Facebook, and he's like, "What are you going to Norway for? That's real random. What are you doing? Seeking asylum over there?"
Oh, listen.
And it was in the middle of like talks about maybe we need to leave America. So he's like, "Are you seeking asylum in Norway?" And I was like, "Hey, that's not a bad idea." And so I got my camera, took along a couple of friends, and we got there and we just started shooting and finding out what people in other countries thought about what was happening here in America to Black Americans, and if we wanted to leave, who would take us in, who would accept us with open arms, or is this country better than America? And so that was my goal to find out, to answer those questions.
So who were you posing that question to, Darnell?
I was stopping everyone who would talk to me in the street. Folks who were at the restaurants we were in. We talked to a waiter. We talked to a guy who was at one of the gentrification marches. Some protesters who were protesting the massacre of Ethiopians. We talked to some guys in the coffee shop in Amsterdam because we went to Norway, London, Amsterdam, and Paris.
Wow, wow.
Talked to some kids sitting in McDonald's in Amsterdam. And it was just, I mean, it was intense. Like we talked to a homeless um, a homeless black guy in Amsterdam who was from America but left soon after the Vietnam War, because he was in the Vietnam War. He came home. He said he came home and felt that America was not for him. He was mistreated so badly. He's like, I left, and he said he'd rather be homeless in Amsterdam than to live in America with whatever they could offer him.
So, having traveled to those countries in Europe, did you find that the same victimization was occurring?
Not on the same level. I found that each country does have its issue with race, and whether they, like in London, they didn't necessarily see it as a race issue. They saw it as a class issue, and naturally, the lower classes were people of color. And so they were like, well, it's not so much racism. We're just, some people are just on a lower class. And it's like, oh, okay, well, we see it as what you're describing is definitely racism where I come from. We got to Amsterdam, and there was a Houston that's also shown in the trailer with the kid in the McDonald's. There was a struggle with the McDonald's manager. They threw him out. The cops surround this kid, and then the kid just disappears, in the middle of like maybe 50 cops outside, and no one knows where he is. And it's like, oh my God! And this was very soon after the Freddie Gray issue.
Wow!
I think Freddie Gray died, and we flew to Oslo, Norway, the next day, and we were in Amsterdam maybe for 2 or 3 days after that. And so it was like, oh my God, this is exactly what just happened in Baltimore. And why is no one doing anything? And it was for some of the kids in the McDonald's, it was like jokes and it was laughs. But for me and my friends we were in McDonald's, we were nervous. We were like, what is going on? Like, no, what's going on? And we were scared because we're like, this kid is about to be killed. And we talked to a kid on the street. He's like, no, they're gonna let him go. This happens all the time. And we're like, really? He's like, yeah, this happens all the time. He'll be okay.
I think your documentary is so timely and so on point. And the other thing that kind of struck me is I've been saying for months at least that I feel as though I want to go to a place, take myself off the grid, so to speak.
Oh, yes.
And be with like-minded people and form a community that doesn't conform to the wider community. So I'm really into bartering. And to me, this is where your documentary is pointing. That for nomads, because I guess that's what black people are, because they're not accepted anywhere.
Exactly.
I mean, now I see now the European immigrants and the Syrian immigrants can see what black people have gone through and are still going through, but nobody wants them.
And nobody's taking us. And it's crazy, especially being.
Say that again, Darnell. Did we lose our caller? Hello?
He's there.
Hello, Darnell.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay,
can you hear me?
Say that again.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Especially in other countries, because they look at me and they say, oh, well, you're American. America's taking care of you. You should be fine over there. And it's like, but no. And it sort of makes you feel like this man without a country. It's like, I'm not safe at home, but no one else wants me. And because they feel that home is taking care of me. And it's like, oh my gosh. Like I even spoke with an immigration attorney a few weeks ago because she wrote an article about black Americans being able to seek asylum. She's like, if someone walked into my office and told me that they feared for their life because of race and told me every issue that African Americans were facing, she said they would have every grounds to seek asylum anywhere in the world. She's like, but it's not happening because no one's opening their doors because they are American. And it's like, oh my gosh, and it's so true. Like I would love to fall off the grid and just be
free and safe, feel safe, not feel that because you're black driving, whatever. I mean, we don't need an excuse to be stopped and harassed by the police. And it's getting to the point where women used to be sacrosanct, but now women are being targeted too. I mean, I've had some very obnoxious police officers get up in my face, and I had to just kindly put them in their place because, as you say,
Mm-hmm.
when you are articulate and you know you're right, they sometimes back down.
Yeah, they get
Yes.
intimidated.
They get intimidated. But then you see, depending on the character of the person that stops you, that feeling of intimidation may lead to, I'm going to show you who's the boss.
Exactly.
Which is exactly what happened in that situation in South Carolina with the police officer and the student. That was just excessive force to show you are going to do what I want you to do.
Right. And even the kids who are speaking out for the cop, it's like, they're just so gone because they feel that, he has every right, he is the boss. And it's like, no, he's not right. Who told you that this was right? And it's funny because, I even, like, I love Amsterdam. Amsterdam is one of my favorite countries. And when I go over there, like, I have friends who are activists in Amsterdam for the rights of, like, the people of color living there. And they're like, well, we have our problems too. And I said, yes, I understand that. But when I'm in Amsterdam and I see a police officer, I don't get scared. I don't tense up, and my body doesn't shut down.
Wow.
And like when I'm here in America, like I was in Amsterdam for a few weeks, and I get back to America, and the second I pull onto the highway from the airport, a cop pulls up behind me and doesn't turn his lights on, but instantly I'm afraid, and I'm looking at every step and every move I make with my hand on the steering wheel, and it's like you would think that I had a trunk full of guns and drugs because of how nervous I am, and it's like, and they pull you over and they say, "What? Well, why are you nervous?" What do you mean? Because I could die right now for no reason whatsoever.
Darnell, this is really a harrowing tale, and you're saying it so flippantly. To live under this jurisdiction of fear that you're not free to be yourself. I don't know if you're having any counseling, but you've mentioned before this shutting down, and I don't know, there has to be some outlet for you, some release for you, because this feeling is toxic, and it will only get worse.
And that's very true. Like that's why I don't have any counseling right now. I have seen a counselor in the past, but we didn't talk. Like this was not on my list of things to talk about because I think when I went there, it wasn't. I didn't see it as big of an issue as it was. It was just a thing that I was born into. Like my father and my mother and my grandfather, they have these same stories, and so it's like this is what you're born into. This is just how the world is.
It's not how the world is.
And it's not. And growing up, in the last many years in college and even in high school, I realized that I was like, this is not how it should be, and this is not how it's supposed to be. So now we have to fight out against this. And and I think I don't know what my outlet is necessarily. Like I write, and I made this film, and I do talk to younger people and even older people about knowing your rights. And we set up forums, city hall forums with police officers and the town in several cities that I've lived in. Here in Los Angeles, in Charlottesville, Virginia, we've done it where we were able to voice our opinions of the police officers there. We had them there, and the police were able to tell us how they feel about certain things. And but I'm an advocate for counseling and for therapy for anyone who seeks it, and I mean it's definitely a necessity.
Right. Well, I mean you definitely are conscious and aware of what you're doing and the repercussions and the ramifications, but you also got to take care of your physical, spiritual, and mental health because we need you on the front lines to make more documentaries. My co-host Peter G is in the chat, is in the studio, and he has a question for you too.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if that cop, if that was his kid, would he slam his kid like that?
Oh no, not at all, man. And it's funny because it's not even if it was his kid. I think one of the questions is, what if it was even just a white kid?
No, wouldn't happen.
It wouldn't have happened whatsoever.
Would not have happened.
Like, and the proof of that is in the exact same city is where they caught Dylan Roof, who went into a church and killed 9 people.
And they
and
took it to
they
McDonald's.
bought him Burger King and
Yeah.
brought him back without a scratch on him.
Yeah.
And it's like you have a young girl in the classroom who just lost her mother. She's now an orphan. She's in a school, and the cop he's telling her one thing, and she's like, "I'm not going to do that." And he slams her on her head and drags her across the classroom, and it's like, "What are you doing?"
I should
Like
also,
if it was his kid, it would not have happened. If it was a white kid, it wouldn't have happened.
No.
But because he was a student of color, he probably stereotyped her and felt she had no support and no one's going to do anything about it.
right.
And
And
he went
thank
way
God,
beyond the call of duty.
thank God for the child who did videotape, who I understand has
Yes.
also been charged with obstruction.
Oh yes.
But we need to support our kids when they are being victimized in this way. And this whole victimization is a part of, the scanners in school and the police in school. It's criminalizing our children.
Mhm. Yes, very much so.
And it's
Very
feeding
much,
them, and it's also doing a number on them that they feel that they are criminals. They're grooming them for the prison industrial complex.
Oh, very much, very much. There was a study done that said they look at the test scores of fourth grade students, black and brown students, to determine how many prisons
How
they're
many
going to build
prisons
in
to
the
build?
future.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, oh
Absolutely.
my God, and this is exactly what's happening. You see it happening the other day in Charleston. It's like, okay, and the cop probably looked at her and said, well, she's not going to make it far anyway, so I can do whatever I want.
Well, thank goodness we can say that what's done in the dark. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Okay, Darnell, hold on 1 second. I'm going to talk to you.
No problem.
But I just need to do something. Wait, I
No
just
problem.
need to do something right here. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're still having our conversation. So, Darnell, tell us about the documentary, because I understand that it's going to have a premiere.
Yeah, so I'm releasing it on the 9th and 10th because I want everyone to see it. I want to send it out to as many festivals as possible, like every festival I can get it into. But before I do that, I want as many people to see it as possible at minimum start a conversation about everything we're talking about right now. So on the 9th and 10th, I'm releasing it on my site, seekingasylumfilm.com. For free, no charge whatsoever. If anyone wants to give a donation, there is a link for it, but it's definitely not required. And it's a 45-minute film. I shot it, I directed it, I edited it, along with a friend of mine, Tariq Pascal, who helped edit. And it's just, I think it's going to be great, at least to start the conversation.
Well, Darnell, let me tell you, you are a fascinating young man. I'd like to have you back on the show as a guest, because I feel like we could talk some more, but it's already half an hour has gone by.
Oh my God.
More than
already?
half an hour.
Oh wow, okay.
This is what happens when you're having a great conversation, right?
Yeah, it felt like 5 minutes.
You have been one of the most incredible guests. And I say that to all my guests, because it's true. I mean, for some reason, the stories that need to be told, they find their way to the Conduit Show. And I always say the Conduit Show is about the sharing of information from me to you and back to me. And, Darnell Lamont Walker, what a mouthful. But
yes.
I think the name fits you well. I think you're destined for great things. I just want you to be careful out there.
I'm going to do my best.
I really need you to be careful out there, because
I have a 10-year-old son, so I'm trying to stick around.
Absolutely, absolutely, because we need you to make more documentaries. We need you to write more books. I'm going to actually purchase a couple of your books on Amazon. The latest one, is that the one about the Book of Quotes?
There's one, the latest one is called Very Short Notes. That I wrote. It's called Very Short Notes I Wrote While I Was High on Cocaine. That's the full title.
Very Short Notes While I Was High on Cocaine?
Yeah.
I take it that's not autobiographical.
No, it's just, it was a catchy title, and so I used it, and it worked. So, but it's very short notes, and it's just a lot of short little notes that I jotted down in my phone over the years. and I realized I was like, I need to put these out, and it's I mean I like it. It's pretty good.
Right. There was another question I was going to ask you. I know you have a blog too, Darnell. Do you want to tell the listeners how they can find you on the blogosphere?
Oh no, I mean I have a million blogs. So I have one, darnellwalker.wordpress.com. I keep one, thecleverbastard.com and passportrequired.com. I have so many.
So many of them.
It just depends on what they're looking for.
I'm just gonna write in the chat room, darnellwalker.wordpress.com. Is that right?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Because I guess that one will lead them to the others, right?
And that one will lead them everywhere else. And that's the more personal one, and I write about everything that's happening in the world and in life, and how I feel about certain things. And so that's the good one.
So do you have any plans afoot to promote this documentary state by state?
I have. What I'm doing is I'm doing screening. I'm trying to get people that I know in several different cities to set up screenings. I have it going in about 10 places all over the world.
Oh wow!
So London, Amsterdam, Paris. I have it in Chicago, L.A., Florida, Atlanta.
Have you got anything in New York?
In New York, not yet. I'm trying to find someone to lead that mission. But it shouldn't be too hard. Like, I'm actually going to be in New York for a few weeks.
When are you coming to New York?
So maybe I could do it. So maybe we can talk about that.
Absolutely. When are you going to be in New York, Darnell?
I'll be in New York on the 17th.
October 17th?
November 17th.
November. So, hold on a second. The release, is that October or November? The release of the documentary?
No, it's November.
Okay, so let me just correct that. It's the 9th and 10th of November. All right, so definitely we need to talk about that, because there are a couple of places that I can think of off the top of my head that could maybe do a hosting party.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, please.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you so much to my friend Karen, who is back with us from China, where she was for 2 years. Oh my goodness, I can't believe the 2 years went by so quickly. And Karen was the one that actually drew my attention to your documentary. I'd heard about some documentary, and it is the same person.
Oh, that's fantastic.
You are the person that I heard about, and I was actually going to investigate it. So Karen just made it quicker for us to connect.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Karen.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yes.
So, Darnell, we're definitely going to continue this conversation off air, because I'd love to steer you in the right direction so that you can have that release in New York. I think the documentary definitely is one worth seeing, and I'd love for you to be there so that the discussion can continue.
That would be fantastic. I so look forward to it.
Wow. Darnell, you've been a great guest. Thank you so much. And the Conduit listeners appreciate you. And they're taking the information and they're going to go and investigate, check out your blog, look at your books, and definitely, hopefully, we can get them also to participate in that live screening of that documentary.
Oh, yes.
All
Let's
right?
make that happen.
Please
Thank you so
take
much.
care of yourself. Please take very good care of yourself. All right? Oh, my goodness. God bless. Take care now.
God bless. Bye.
All right, Conduit listeners. Okay, we have been talking with this awesome young man, goes by the name of Darnell Lamont Walker. He is a filmmaker who has just recently completed a documentary called Seeking Asylum. If you go on my Facebook page, people, you'll see a trailer, and it's very, very interesting, the trailer that's there. Oh, I gotta hang up the phone. Thank you so much, Darnell. Thank you very, very much. That was a great conversation. I